Good morning, Mr. Clerk. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have quorum.
I call this meeting of City Council for January 29th, 2026 to order and acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. We'll now have the opening prayer. Please rise if you're able, and we'll hear from Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let us take a moment of reflection. Gracious and eternal source of wisdom and justice, we pause at the outset of this council deliberations to ask for your presence and guidance. We ask for your blessings upon this chamber. Grant the mayor and each councillor wisdom, the clarity of mind to see beyond the immediate and to discern the lasting impact of our decisions on the 7 generations to come. Grant us with a moral compass rooted in compassion, equity, and a deep commitment to the common good of all who call our diverse city home. Grant us thoughtfulness and patience to listen deeply, to seek understanding before judgment, and to honor the voices of the people we are elected to serve, especially the most vulnerable. As we weigh complex matters of policy, budget, and community well-being, instill in us a spirit of collaboration and respect. May our debates be vigorous yet constructive, and may our shared goals always be the building of more than just a vibrant and flourishing Winnipeg, a city where reconciliation, innovation, and community can walk hand in hand. Bless the staff and those who contribute to this civic work. Protect their dedication and strengthen their hands. May the proceedings of this day be marked with integrity, and may all that we accomplish here today contribute to the peace and prosperity of our city. With gratitude for our service, we offer this prayer, amen, or as we say in harmony in this land, miigwech, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. On to roll call, Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sherman, His Worship Whittingham, Councillors Allard, Councillors Johnson, Williams, Edward, Eady, Gilroy, May, Logan, and Benson.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a leave of absence motion for Councillor Orlikow. If you could please read it into the record.
Moved by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Dolan, that Councillor Orlikow will be granted a leave of absence from today's meeting to go to personal matter.
Thank you. And now welcoming back our pages. Pardon me? Yes, the question on that. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. And now welcoming back our pages. Ekhamjot Brar from Maples Met School, who resides in the Old Kildonan Ward, and Xander Woodley from Elmwood High School, who resides in the Elmwood East Kildonan Ward. Thank you again for being here to serve council. We'll now move into morning announcements. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning to you and all of council members, those who are here in the gallery and those who are watching online. Just a few announcements this morning. First of all, I want to acknowledge Winnipeg Police Service following the announcement of charges against 5 individuals in connection with arson and extortion offenses targeting local convenience stores. These were serious and deeply concerning crimes that created fear for small business owners and their families. I want to commend the work of the investigators and the officers and the public, all who were involved in any way in bringing this investigation forward. I stated it publicly. Let me be clear again that intimidation, extortion, and violence against business owners will not be tolerated in our city. If people engage in that, they will be investigated, caught, and held to account. I also want to highlight the continuing progress on downtown housing through Centre Ventures work supporting building conversions. It's a credit to this council, the members of this council, and our staff to get us to this place. And it was really exciting to announce 4 approved projects that will add 297 new residential units to downtown, including 106 units designated as affordable housing. These projects will bring underutilized heritage buildings back to life while preserving downtown's heritage and character. I also want to recognize the developers involved. They are experienced, ambitious, and deeply committed to building a stronger downtown. Centre Venture's long-term goal of adding 750 housing units per year downtown and doubling downtown's population is an important step to a more vibrant, lived-in city core. On January 27th, we recognize National Holocaust Remembrance Day. We remember the 6 million Jewish people and others who were murdered during the Holocaust, again, along with others who were targeted by the Nazi regime. This day reminds us of the devastating consequences of anti-Semitism and hate. And as a city, we reaffirm our responsibility to remember, to educate, and to stand against anti-Semitism and hate in all its forms. And today is the anniversary of the 2017 attack on the Islamic Cultural Center of Quebec City. 6 people were killed on that day and many others were injured in an act of violence that shook Muslim communities across Canada, including here in Winnipeg. Similar to what I said a moment ago, we stand together against all forms of hate as we remember the victims and stand in solidarity today with Winnipeg's Muslim community. And finally, we are just on the edge of February, and February every year means it's time for Festival de Voyageurs. And Festival this year runs from February 13th to 22nd, and so I hope everyone has a chance to get out and take in some of the great festivities and the fun, the food that all that Festival contains. So thank you, Madam Speaker. Hey-ho.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next up for morning announcements, Councillor Chambers, followed by Councillor Rollins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As Mayor Gillingham has alluded to, February is drawing upon us. And as we embark on this month, Black History Month, I want to extend a sincere invitation to each of you to actively participate in the vital programming organized by Black History Manitoba. This month is more than a celebration. It is a foundational opportunity for learning, reflection, and building a more inclusive and understanding Winnipeg. Black History Manitoba, as the province's leading organization, is dedicated to this cause, has curated a powerful schedule of events, including lectures, cultural showcases, educational workshops, and community dialogues. They will highlight the immense contributions, resilience, and ongoing narratives of Winnipeg's Black community. Your visible presence and engaged participation are critically important for several reasons. Demonstrating leadership and solidarity, informed governance, engaging directly with narratives provided is essential for context and in decisions that you make. It's also important to understand the historical and contemporary realities of racial equality, inclusion, and justice, leading to more empathetic and effective policymaking. It also strengthens our community trust. Active participation builds bridges and fosters trust between community, civic leadership, and the Black community. I urge each member of council to commit to attending at least one event this month. And tomorrow we're kicking off Black History Month here at City Hall. Mayor Gillingham is hosting a breakfast to kick off Black History Month, and I encourage you all to attend that as your presence matters. This is a meaningful step towards a more united Winnipeg. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you at events through Black History Month.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers, for that. Councillor Rollins, followed by Councillor Mays.
I want to acknowledge just quickly before I move on to a condolence statement for Dr. Lavallee, the words of the mayor in support of the Jewish community and the Muslim communities, in particular the anniversary today and the denouncing of hate in the city, very important. And I also want to acknowledge Councillor Chambers, who will bring this Jewish woman to church on February 1st, my local church, where he will be doing what is a great deal of labor that he does each and every Black History Month. So I hope to see the congregation at St. George's and him. In Treaty 1 territory here, and I want to share condolences with the Manitoba Kiiwetinoong Okinamakak and the family, friends, colleagues of Dr. Barry Lavallee, Madam Speaker. I worked with this leader really briefly this term and last. in public health. Dr. Lavallee stood not only at the forefront of the COVID crisis, but he also stood as an incredible public health official, an incredible mind, doing tireless work. Madam Speaker, it was in part due to Dr. Lavallee going into encampments that and him losing a leg because of some of the work he did that cautioned me and informed some of my work. He brought reassurance all the time in dangerous and frightening times. He supported those struggling with addiction, taught me about Indigenous-led harm reduction, and indeed the whole community. And I want to really give my deep regret to his colleagues for losing him all too soon. He offered tremendous support to the First Nations people throughout Turtle Island, but indeed Winnipeg. And I'm so proud that he called Winnipeg home and that he spent his long career here, and he spent his long career dismantling colonial systems, in particular in primary health care. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Rollins, for sharing that. Councillor Mays?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yesterday saw the 10th and final day of the 10-day task force on school play structure funding. I want to thank all of the parents, trustees, MLAs from a couple of different parties, and a number of councillors who met with me, school administrators. It was actually a fascinating process to go out to Brandon, to go up to North Kildonan, to go. I had never heard, I don't think, a Bison-run school before the start of this, but now I have. So a couple of recommendations, one of which is...
Councillor Mays, I appreciate your announcement, but it's not really fitting into the announcement category, in my opinion. Can we save
And I
that
was
for
just
when
about to
you're...
say something positive about Councillor Lukes, and you
But
cut,
when
yeah,
you're,
and you
when
cut
you're,
me short.
when your report comes...
There you go again.
When your report comes forward, we look
There
forward to...
will be no report coming
we-
forward. It's not a report to council.
When
but
your email comes
I-
forward to council, we look forward to receiving
members
the
of the public,
information.
and I want to thank Councillor Lukes for her work on this initiative as well.
Thank you. We have an important condolence motion here. Madam Clerk, will you read it into the record, please?
Moved by Councillor Durand-Wood, seconded by Councillor Sharma. The council places on record its profound sorrow at the death of former councillor Alfred Alf Scovern, which occurred on January 4th, 2026. Mr. Scovern served as councillor for the Talbot and Elmwood wards from 1971 to 1988. This council extends to his family its deepest sympathy and condolences in their bereavement.
Thank you. Please rise for a moment of silence. Councillor Dobson, will you move the minutes of the meetings held on December 17th and December 18th, 2025 to be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Now moving into delegations. Madam Clerk? Is David Grant our first delegation? Yes. Okay, and he is appearing, is it via Zoom today? Okay, and there's a number of items he's speaking to. They are listed in the agenda. Mr. Grant, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks again for welcoming delegations. I share the mayor's thanks to the police service. I want to acknowledge the landowners who pay for all that you will be talking about today. It fills me with sadness that so many hardworking folks cannot afford to live here because costs have risen so much. I invite you to consider every way in which you can avoid spending more of their money. Moving on to governance. Topic 1, the audit committee. We need to have this committee up and running. We need it to report by summer to show voters that you care. Please avoid delays. Governance, other topic 1, Chief Construction Officer. I spoke in favor of this position when it was discussed here. To justify the cost of this position, regular and fulsome reporting is essential. The folks who supported the creation of this position were counting on this sort of reporting. Questions from members of council, the topic for today, are a start. Regular reporting on progress on city projects is also essential. Such reports should be published monthly on the EPC and council agendas, unless the content indicates actions so egregious, of course, that lawyers must be involved. On Public Works, topic 1, this is a major purchase of highly technical machines. A stereotypical car buyer may walk into a showroom, point at a car and say, "I want that red one." No one wants the city to be anything like that buyer. The success of this purchase depends entirely on what we will be buying. Other cities have proven that buying the wrong buses will lead to unfixable problems. Why is there no spec sheet supplied by the vendor? Why is there no indication of the exact models of the buses that we are buying? The vendor knows. Why have we and you not been told? Did the city explore charging at bus stops? Electric buses in Boston were charged at bus stops nearly 20 years ago. Such buses weigh tons less, cost tens of thousands less, and do not break up roads as badly as do buses with huge batteries. Wireless charging is now an option for private cars. You can buy one now, and it charges as soon as you pull into your garage without plugging it in. There's been no explanation why en route charging was not considered. Why is there no indication of the means by which these vehicles will be heated in winter? On busy routes, space heating the inside of the bus, uses more energy than moving the bus. With advanced space heating, the bus can run for more hours, and it can be cheaper and do less damage to roads. These are questions that I hope you will ask when you get your chance with the bus folks. On EPC 7, proposed amendments to the terms of reference for the HR committee. To ensure that this group can be meaningful and of true value to council, I suggest another change. Please add these 2 sentences to section 1.2 of the terms of reference. The committee shall seek out any issues raised at any public meeting at City Hall that refer to any of the 5 concerns that are essential for section 1.2. This shall include concerns raised by members of council, delegations, and staff. By advising council in this way, problems can be mitigated without anyone writing to the Manitoba Commission. Such mitigation can preserve the reputation of City Hall. This HR committee has been silent when rights issues arose at SPC and council meetings in recent years. Having a second staff person could enable the committee to fulfill this important mitigation function. If the TOR are not improved in this way, there really is no need for a second person. Without the improvements to the TOR, it's hard to see this committee ever being relevant to the important work that council must do. On services topic 3, topic 4, you will be making big changes to Kings Park, my favorite park. You have failed to be open about these plans. You owed us consultation, but we didn't even get a map or a list of the changes. Why the secrecy? My family and I have been biking on this loop trail for 40 years. It is still my favorite biking destination. Many of us who use it see no reason to change it or to spend $300,000 on those changes. City Hall has promised us openness and transparency. Why did the consultation that you did go no further than your lawyer's office? And I was going to talk about another spending issue, but it's there in your printed agenda. And I thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Any questions today? Okay, seeing none. Appreciate your presentation. Have a good day. Our next delegation is appearing remotely, Vicky Poirier, in opposition to item 2 of the Executive Policy Committee, the notice of motion regarding the North American Strategy for Competitiveness membership and expenses related to the Red River Basin Commission. Welcome, Vicky.
Hi. Hello. Bonjour, bonjour. I appreciate Mayor's speech. It was great. And I'd like to land knowledge my reserve and all the reserves on the Shoal Lake 37, 39, and 40, and the Anishinaabe and Ojibwe people. So I'm speaking today, notice a motion for the Red River Basin. This motion makes a good point about money spent on the city membership in clubs and groups. Taxpayers would actually benefit from a review of all the memberships that make the city to pay a big fee. How many organizations does the city pay membership fees to? How many trips to meetings does the city pay for? Why not use Zoom to attend virtually? Free trade is a federal issue. Why is Winnipeg paying this big fee? Before voting on this motion, prudence demands that all the info on all the trips be collected. Every membership and travel destination should require a new justification with the cost-benefit analysis of travel to be written by city staff. On the other hand, the Red River Group is a nonprofit organization with offices in Winnipeg and Fargo. It is focused on water issues that are critical to Manitoba. It is holding a fish fry fundraiser in March in Manitoba. I suggest that Winnipeg continue to support its important work. If Councillors Rawadi and Chambers can take part by Zoom for the Red River Basin meetings outside Manitoba, even better. Please continue to support this commission and our two representatives. And Mays, I appreciate you too. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, Vicki, for your presentation. There's no questions today. Next is Jessica Peebles, who is appearing in opposition to item 2 of the report of the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services, the report dated January 9th regarding the Winnipeg Police Board, the 2026-2030 strategic plan. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. So I just quickly wrote this because I have a formal report that I'll be sending to the Winnipeg Police Board. But this is in regards to the reaccreditation for the CLIA for the Winnipeg Police. I think it needs to be looked into again and reevaluated because the Winnipeg Police have not protected the community the way that they should have. They didn't connect me or protect me with my domestic violence, and they also didn't investigate the Maples personal care home properly during COVID. During the media, they say that the homicide unit investigated, but my company was actually there, and I was the one who stabilized the Maples personal care home. So nothing was done properly, and now I'm finding out that Winnipeg police officers are the ones behind my slander and smear campaign because my domestic violence was connected to police officers. So that being said, this needs to be addressed moving forward, definitely, because women aren't safe. I've addressed this at the Winnipeg Police Board about domestic violence with the police multiple times, and nothing's ever done, and all I'm ever called is a liar, so I'm coming to speak to you guys about it publicly. I've also called the Winnipeg Police Association to speak to it privately as well. So I'm just going to read this here quickly. So the Winnipeg Police should be investigating the Maples personal care home properly for the provincial COVID investigation. Instead, they have been using taxpayers' money.
Jessica, I'd like to ask you to speak to the report. Specifics, as you mentioned, on incidents, it's good that you're directly communicating with the police and continue doing that. Okay, would you like to speak to the report, please?
The strategic report? Yes. Yeah, I'm letting the board know that they're not able to do their job properly because they didn't do the Maples personal care home investigation properly. You guys need to make sure that the residents are taken care of and that they are properly respected for what happened to them. Okay? You can't cover up what happened during COVID. You guys take care.
Thank you, and we'll receive the submission that you alluded to that would come in writing. Thank you. Our final delegation today is Terry Washniak, who is appearing in opposition to item 1 of the report of the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works dated January 8th, 2026. It's regarding the approval of contract number 2 under extension number 2 for supply and delivery of heavy-duty, low-floor, zero-emission transit buses. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor, councillors. For your information, it's only 49 more days till spring. Yeah, we're all counting those days. I'm here to speak in opposition to specifically the electric buses that are considered being purchased. Not only are they twice as much money, so we could be buying twice as many buses for the same amount of money, but they only are viable on 30% of the routes that are registered in Winnipeg right now. This is a tremendous liability. 70% of the routes that the city has, you cannot put an electric bus on. So it becomes a boutique problem, expensive, selected places to run, and the history of these buses, not in your reports. There's a tremendous amount of missing information from a report on $50 million expenditure. But missing from that report is what has been going on with electric buses in other cities with our climate. Saskatoon, 110 kilometers on a bus that was rated at 280. That was at extreme cold weather. Electric buses, the colder it gets, the less reliable, the more dangerous they become. We cannot use them as emergency shelter. We cannot use them for emergency evacuation. It would be a one-way trip. There's no refueling an electric bus unless you put it in the station in a covered garage for several hours. And that, Mayor Gillingham, brings up a new issue. Not new, but it's something that you've been aware of. You have a commitment to creating or recovering a kilowatt of hour electric energy from resources that the city.
You're supposed to speak through the chair. Is that not correct?
Thank you for the reminder. Delegation, any questions through the chair and the responses as well?
My apologies to the chair, but I have to tell you that in the situation like I'm in here now, the chair is behind me. I don't get to see the chair or speak to the chair unless I turn around. So I apologize for that to
You
you.
can certainly look around the chamber and still address me. Thank you.
Please assume that any delegation speaking is speaking through the chair because we happen to be physically in front of the chair. So my apologies and to both of you.
Just to clarify, sorry, just to not address the councillor directly, it's more just speaking through the chair. Yeah.
I don't think I was speaking to the mayor specifically
It's all good.
directly, but I was going to refer to, his promise to create 1 kilowatt of hour. And then I would request, through you, I guess, that the mayor talk to the Premier Rob Canoe about that, in that he is, or the province of Manitoba is telling all of us that between 2027 and 2030, our province is going to be running into a situation where we are 600 kilowatts short of electric power in peak times. So when we need it most, electricity and cold weather, the province, the premier is telling us that we would be in the situation of buying American power to get us through those times at a very expensive rate. So with that in mind, knowing that we have a mandate, and that's what our administration is working towards, a fully electrified city by 2045, and by 2030, 15% of our transit fleet to be electric, that is coming right on top of an energy crisis in our province. We don't have the electricity in peak times, and we're investing tens and tens of millions of dollars into electric buses that won't work when we need them, won't help us in an emergency, and will add to the problem created by things like heat pumps that require electricity instead of natural gas.
Thank you for your presentation. We do have some questions. Go to questions now. Councillor Wyatt.
Councillor, the question I have is, and I give you the title, Councillor, because I think you can take it with you after you leave.
I think I do.
The question I have is this. Putting aside the fact that we're facing a climate crisis on the planet and that we're seeing jurisdiction, nation after nation, never mind municipalities or local governments around the world, moving towards green energy, putting aside all the facts that we've heard from all the scientists. I know there's a lot of skeptics, there's a lot of naysayers, but pretty well the evidence is overwhelming mounted that we're heading towards the climate crisis if we do not decrease our amount of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. Putting aside the fact that many on this council have advocated for many years, including myself on the Public Works Committee for 2 years, that we move towards electric buses. Putting aside the fact that those buses come from the city of Winnipeg, manufactured here in my ward in Transcona with 1,600 employees, and that the technology, yes, is new, but should be putting aside the fact that cities should support a local industry, especially when they're trying to get a new technology out into the market. Putting aside all those facts, are you aware, and you raised the issue of costs, are you aware that we are saving, if we move to electric fleet, millions of dollars every year in fuel costs that we now have to spend? Fuel costs that go from the province of Alberta, not Manitoba. I would prefer to keep my dollars here, sir. Would you not support that?
Well, that's the problem with what we think is the right thing to do and what reality forces us to do. We don't have the electricity to be an electric city. We don't have the electricity to avoid running diesel buses. We have, in 2027 to 2020, between 2027 and 2030, the province of Manitoba, I don't know why it's not in your information, Councillor. It should be. We should all know about this if you're making decisions about electric buses. We are in an energy crisis. You're shaking your head, but I'm telling you that that's what the province is telling all of us. And I apologize, Madam Chair, for speaking directly to the councillor there. When we're looking at this, we have to be thinking, as Councillor Chambers said in the opening prayer, about the future. What's right for the future? And right now, investing in the same kind of things that will be a major drain, a major electrical drain. We're building buildings full of electrical charging stations that cannot be used when we need them most. They cannot be used in the coldest weather. Hydrogen, on the other hand, we can store and use at any time. Use the electricity in off-peak hours, charge up your hydrogen cells, and we can still run. It's even more expensive than electric, but at least it can run for 24 hours. At the very best, even in the summertime, we only get 15 hours out of an electric bus. Diesel buses can go 2 or 3 days without fueling, based on running in our Winnipeg route systems. They're very safe, very reliable. Electric buses can only run in 30% of our bus routes. They can only run for a fraction of the hours of time, and they're not safe when we need them in an emergency. Compound that with the province telling us we're in an energy crisis at peak times. It's coming. They're building gas-fired emergency generators to compensate for that. We, as a city council, should be talking to the province and saying, is this the right time for us to be running 15% of the city on electric buses, or should that be delayed until it fits into the bigger grid? Making personal ego, I won't call it ego, but central ideas to say Winnipeg is going to be electric, we're going to eliminate national gas, we're going to stop gas-burning vehicles from running into downtown Winnipeg. Those are your policies. Those are your policies that they're not reasonable anymore, and so many of them have been voted down. But the idea that we can go ahead with electric buses, even when the grid says we can't afford more electric buses. The grid is telling us that. Get that information before you spend the money. That's what I'm asking this council to do. Refer this back to committee, get the right information, know the difference know how much money we could be saving by sticking with diesel or diesel electric and having reliability, as opposed to going electric at this time.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Wyatt.
Are you aware that the city of Winnipeg is not responsible for Manitoba Hydro? That's 100% the jurisdiction of the provincial government, and that it's the responsibility of the provincial government to ensure that hydro is operating efficiently and going to meet the demands of the future. Would you not say that's correct? Have you spoken, in light of that, have you spoken to the province and written to the Premier requesting this issue be addressed?
Have you asked me if I've done that?
Yes.
No, Premier, but I am informed enough to know that the Premier, or the province of Manitoba, is telling this city council and everyone in Winnipeg that we are not electric rich anymore. We are building more dams. It will cost more taxpayer money to keep up. Our surplus energy is contracted, sold south to the border. We can't make it just because we need it. It takes years of construction, billions in investments. The timeline between how fast we could be running a fleet of electric buses and how fast the electricity to run those buses can be put in place, they have to coincide. Otherwise, you're making premature, foolish decisions. So I request, go back to, send this back to executive committee, get the right information, and come back forward. If I'm wrong, if the province is going to tell the city of Winnipeg, or the information is going to tell the city of Winnipeg, no problem, proceed ahead. Buy those New Flyer buses, by all means. But New Flyer makes diesel buses long before they made electric ones.
Final question.
Sure, the province does monitor our agenda, and anything on our agenda that was any kind of issue with them, we would have been dealing with it by now. But I can ask you this: are you aware that right now, today, without spending billions of dollars, without years of construction, the province of Manitoba has a power plant at its disposal that it has chosen, obviously, not to start up again, but it is there, and other countries are doing that, and that is the former AECL nuclear power plant in Pinawa, which has enough power to generate not only for our fleet of buses, but virtually the transformation of electric vehicles in this entire city. Are you aware that all they would have to do is turn that power plant back on, give probably hundreds of new jobs in terms of scientists, or at least dozens, in the plant? Be great for the town of Pinawa, great for local development. Why is the province not doing that? Have you asked the Premier that?
Thank you.
As a citizen, I appreciate getting reminded that we have a nuclear power plant. I've been there, I've toured that plant. It would be interesting to put that, but that's the kind of decision and dialogue that this committee, this council should be having with the province of Manitoba. That as a citizen, I'm a voice in the wind, but this council has the power to make that kind of decision and add that communication level to what the province is doing. It might solve all our problems. So send it back, come back with that as an assurance that our electric buses can run with nuclear power. I'm not opposed to that.
Thank you for the response. Seeing no further questions, appreciate your presentation today.
Thank you.
Have a good day. We'll now move into Executive Policy Committee reports, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to introduce the report and move adoption of consent agenda items 1 to 8 because I'd like to pull 9, please.
9 is pulled. Shareholder approval of the North Portage Development Corporation and the Forks Renewal Corporation to finance affordable housing. Okay, I'll call the question, item 1 through 8. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Madam Clerk?
Item 9, shareholder approval for the North Portage Development Corporation and the Forks Renewal Corporation to finance an affordable housing project.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I simply want to pull this report to highlight the really exciting news that is coming out of Railside and out of the Forks. I want to commend Sarah Stasiak and their entire team, Board Chair Rennie Zagalski, the entire board, for the exciting developments that are about to take place there at Railside. Also want to thank all the developers who are participating in this investment. This is really a collective effort to see housing started on the sites at Railside. It's the federal government, the province is assisting, the city certainly is involved, the private sector also. And what we're looking at, of course, ultimately at the end of the day, will be 10 buildings that are set to be built there. The first 3 have begun or are about to get underway. Councillor Rollins and I were there at the announcement in middle of January to see really what was the kind of a ribbon cutting, kind of sod turning event. 3 of the 10 buildings, as I said, are under construction that represent 350 new units of housing that will be built. By the time it's all done, in 2040, we'll be looking at 1,200 units of housing that will be built on the site. There'll be market rents available and all the way to deeply affordable units as well. And this is really, really a project, a set of projects that will transform that site and that community. It's part of the broader, exciting transformation that's taking place, an investment that is happening throughout our downtown. I won't list all the projects, but we as a council have been approving projects, partnering with federal and provincial governments and the private sector and nonprofits to see housing built in the downtown, which will lead to up to 5,000 new residents over the next several years moving into our downtown, a 30% increase in our downtown population. And so this is good news. It's something to highlight, and just want to pull the matter to make those points again. There's a lot of really, really great development happening in the downtown, which will see more residents living in the core of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wyatt, followed by Councillor Rollins.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'd like to speak and also speak in support of this clause. This is a long time coming. Glad to see the Forks finally moving on this project, making this happen. It's exciting to see the different buildings. I've seen some of the names that are coming forward. One is, I think, is going to be called the Kink. It'll be kind of very much marketed towards the younger crowd. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that the viability of the Forks, one of the best things, one of the best projects ever spearheaded out of this council by former Mayor Bill Norrie, really has had a transformation on our city in many ways. And the idea of having hundreds of individuals living at the Forks, making foot traffic, the viability of the area, making it more attractive just by their very presence is a positive step for our city. I would also like to add, I think the Forks needs to probably look at some options in the future. There was always a plan for a second parkade at the Forks. It never got off the ground. A previous mayor was opposed to it, Glenn Murray. But I can say to you that, that very much it is going to be in need, I think, in the near future. It's one of those things that we tend to, we look at it after the fact, after the problem arises, but it's definitely going to be something to address. But having said that, this is a wonderful project going forward. Very excited about it. I think it's positive. The attention, I think it will bring more to the Forks. Just bringing in the new flavor of all these new architectural designs is going to be positive for our downtown. So I want to thank the mayor for his comments, and I look forward to supporting this board.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councillor Rollins.
I want to join everyone in celebrating the moment that is the homes that are going to be at Railside at the Forks. And in particular, I want to recognize board members Natalie Thiessen, Christian Robin, Connor Lloyd, Claudette Leclerc, Catherine Kleffer, Scott Kitching, Rhonda Forgs, Rennie Zagowski that the mayor mentioned, but I also want to pay a bit of tribute to Jenny Gerbazi, of course, who for 20 years was moving the project forward in this chamber and had been in lockstep with the Forks. And in some cases, you're dragging the projects through. And she did, I think, important work, not only as the local councillor, but on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And that project brings together Minister of Housing, Bernadette Smith, also local MP Ben Carr, who was there with the mayor and I last week, and countless others, Andre Silva, who is putting up the first buildings, as well as Tom Jansen from Civilians, Sasha, and Johanna Hume and more have been surrounding this project with the energy that only Winnipeggers can bring to bear. The more shopping, more food, more art, more culture has always, and more public spaces has always been part of this wonderful downtown national park. That there's going to be housing too, and that you could see the crane in the sky was so great. The Forks Railside will always depend on that richness of daily life at street level. It will be built not in the shadow of, but inspired by the Human Rights Museum, the community spaces and arts and culture that we have there. The day, Madam Speaker, that I walked to that next great announcement at the Forks, the guys were playing on the rink, the ODR at the Forks. It was a really beautiful moment. The dogs were walking down to the river trail. Madam Speaker, it's a very exciting project. It is a reminder, though, that we need to keep the momentum on the investment roadmap to the downtown. This council knows my feelings that we should have seen investments in 2026, and it shouldn't wait till 2027. The amount of folks that are in the downtown, in Osborne, they need the city services, commensurate with that, to work, live, and play, Madam Speaker. And so it was a great announcement. We're going to keep that momentum going, and it's very nice to hear the positive words today for the Four Rouges Fort Garry ward.
Thank you, Councillor Rollins. Mr. Mayor, back to you to close if you wish.
You can call a question, Madam Speaker.
All in favor of item 9?
Aye.
Contrary? That's carried. We'll now move into the notice of motion, which was moved by Councillor Dobson and seconded by Councillor Mays regarding funding for the Sturgeon Height Collegiate Running Track Project from the December 18th council meeting. Councillor Dobson, do you wish
thank
to
you very
introduce
much,
the item?
Madam Chair. Councillors have in the past funded running track renewal projects with 4 school divisions: Louis Riel, Seven Oaks, Winnipeg, River East, Transcona. Council has also supported upgrading tracks in 4 or 5 community committees. The running track at Sturgeon Heights Collegiate in the St. James Ward will be the 5th school division with support from the city, and will also be the 5th and final community committee with support from the city for an upgraded track. As the city councillor for St. James, I encourage everyone to support this motion, as it will provide the St. James School Division, as well as the residents in West Winnipeg with access to a great experience on a softer track. It will provide safety for our athletes as well as our residents by providing shock absorption and thus reducing the impact on our athletes' bodies as well as the slip resistance for those using the running track. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mays?
Well, I don't need notes to speak to this one. Thanks very much to Councillor Dobson for working with me on this. I don't think we've had a project together in our many shared years on council, so very pleased to work with them on this one. Yeah, pretty straightforward motion. Surplus funds left over from 6 years ago from Parks project. Long explanation in my ward. Thanks to Mike McGinn for spotting that there was a surplus, and I'd like to move it over into Councillor Dobson's ward. I have put some of my community's funding in. Councillor Dobson has put in hundreds of thousands of dollars toward this project. Some of the people around this table said, well, you should get the school division to put in. We are getting the school division to put in, or else this isn't going to go forward. It's about $1 million project. It builds on the work we've done in other wards. Madam Speaker, of course, you and I collaborated on that one with Seven Oaks School Division at Garden City. That used some surplus funding as well. Councillor Brawadi and Chambers and I collaborated on River East. Councillor Allard and I have done a couple. Councillor Orlico and I put some more money in for Grant Park. So I think if you looked at a map of the city of Winnipeg where the tracks are, you would say, yeah, you need one out in the west, unless you're Russ Wyatt, where you would probably say, well, we need one in Transcona before we do the one in the west. But hopefully we'll get to Russ's ward after we do this one. Some might say, well, why aren't you doing it on the city property? The city park staff have been adamant that they don't want to modernize or upgrade the city running tracks. In fact, they sodded over the one at Maginot Arena that was in Councillor Allard's ward. They've sodded over the one at Memorial Park in my ward. So good collaboration. The mayor talked about collaboration at the event the other day here at City Hall. It's good collaboration with school division, and if necessary, if the school division can get some money from the province, even better. But it does reflect how we've been approaching these over the past number of years. It is the only community committee where we haven't done one of these projects. I look forward to opening this up with Councillor Dobson and his ward, hopefully this year or next year, and invite everybody, and we can all run the ceremonial first lap together. So hope you can support this. And with this and one more grant from me, we'll be at the $600,000 we need out of the city, and then it's our partners at St. James School Division are going to have to come through with the rest. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt?
So, Madam Speaker, I stand to rise. I know that Councillor Mays and I see now Councillor Dobson, but Councillor Mays has been a strong advocate of these tracks at various schools. I want to thank Councillor Mays for inviting me to the opening of a track. Wasn't in my ward, but at a school that services part of my ward in Windsor Park. I've got to be honest with you, Madam Speaker, I was somewhat uncomfortable in two regards. Number one, I call it jumping on the coattails. I don't like jumping on coattails, especially going to an announcement where I really didn't have anything to do with the ability of getting that project underway at the school. And just there for the photo op. I think it's disingenuous. I've avoided that my entire political career. If I had something to do with the project, then I'll come and I'll be part of the announcement. If I had nothing, then what's the point, right? That's optics, we call that. And anyway, that was part of it. And then the other part that made me uncomfortable was seeing Councillor Mays in his shorts running around the running track. But putting that aside, it was a fun day. And I got to say, congratulate the councillor. I do want to point out that it is crucial, Madam Speaker, that the school divisions, which we're doing this, as Councillor Mays points out, often on school land. Unfortunately, in Transcona, where I don't know if he's aware of this, but for whatever reason, when the division was the original division of Transcona Springfield, for whatever reason, virtually every school almost in the ward, the land where the school is school land, and then you step a foot outside of the boundary of that land, and it's City of Winnipeg parkland, which makes it a challenge for us because to bring the school division to the table, to put money into playgrounds, money into parks, is extremely difficult. At least I have found it in my division. But having said that, that would be something that would be welcome to see the province and school division step up because these facilities are not cheap to build. And they're wonderful to have, but the technology that's being used now, it's not just simple gravel track, but the type of composite and asphalt composite used is at the higher end. We'll see how long it lasts, but I understand it does last a long time. But I think the key thing here would be to get their funding in place as well. So I'd like to support the motion and thank Councillor Mays. Hopefully we can see some progress throughout the city. But it would be nice, rather than doing the one-offs, Madam Speaker, if I just add this, we often will create a program around these. If this is a high concern to council, to create a program that would be somewhat organized and strategic based on the needs, if there is a need for this in the city, and then determine or not whether or not there should be a capital line item in the budget for this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First off, I wanted to commend Councillor Mays for this initiative, not just in the St. James Ward in West Winnipeg, but also throughout the city of Winnipeg. Clearly an initiative that he looks to see through to get into every community committee and hopefully into every neighborhood. It's always welcome, these types of investments in recreation amenities. And he has a great partner in Councillor Dobson for this type of thing. However, I do have to rain on the parade a little bit here. At the end of the day, we have city resources that are dilapidated. Councillor Mays pointed out a few. I have one in my ward as well. And I do understand that the city bureaucrats within these departments have their own priorities. But at some point in time, Councillor Wyatt has preached this, we need to take control of the ship yet again and direct them on what we want, not what they want. And this is a perfect example. If we as a council want running tracks to the city of Winnipeg, then we need to tell them that's what we want. Even though there's a pushback and they say, we don't want that, we want this, we want investment here. Well, that's too bad. Council is supreme. In regards to this funding, the $92,000 and change, almost $93,000, this was for golf lands repurposing. Conveniently enough, the city of Winnipeg has entered into a takeover and operations of the Canoe Club golf course. It would be fitting that money associated with repurposing might go towards that investment that, again, conveniently has seen a profit to the city of Winnipeg in the last few years since the pandemic. However, again, because the city of Winnipeg bureaucrats choose to identify their projects as priority over council's projects as priority, we won't see that money go towards things that we're interested in. We're going to see it go towards whoever jumps on it first and identifies a project of their choosing. It's no criticism of Councillor Mays in this case. It's a great project. It would just be nice that after the single largest tax increase by the province of Manitoba and their school divisions that we take the heat for as council, we as councillors take the heat for, because it's on a City of Winnipeg property tax bill that comes to them, that we turn around and say to them, you invest in recreation amenities on your properties and don't call on us to do it. However, if this council so chooses, we reinforce that yes, we are willing participants and partners in this, but don't cry the next time a resident calls you and says, thanks for increasing my property taxes. Because guess what? You're not holding the school divisions accountable. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Any further speakers? Councillor Eadie?
I don't know that Councillor May spoke yet. Yes, Madam Speaker. I'm going to be supporting this motion. My ward also understands the difficulty in working on providing some kind of recreation play structures or running tracks on schoolyards in our area. One of the realities, very often I'm not seeing projects in my ward depending on the school division, putting their own school division tax dollars into some of these structures, and which is a difficulty. They do have each school division does right now under legislation has the ability to do their own taxing. But what I will point out, Madam Speaker, and this occurs all over the place, all over the city. The grounds of a school where you have various facilities to play, it's for all the residents, because if the school's not using it, people who live in the area will be using it. There's a small little rudimentary running track at Ecole Lansdowne in my ward. It was funded through a provincial grant and a City of Winnipeg LDR grant to the school. In order to do that, it's not a professional running track of anything, but it is usable by the people in both our wards, Madam Speaker, because that's right at the boundary of Old Kildonan and the Minorski wards. And so these projects are important, and one of the things I think I may have heard, and I'm not sure, but it sounds like the St. James School Division, Madam Speaker, is putting in some of their own, at Sturgeon Heights, are putting in some of their own dollars of hundreds of thousands. And if somebody wants to clarify that for me when they close, I think that's a good thing. That means that the school division itself and the school appreciate that whatever they have in their outdoors is available to the neighborhoods around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, if any. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm calling upon school divisions to fund their facilities, their rec amenities, their playgrounds. To Councillor Duncan's point, there were significant increases in property taxes related to school divisions, and they've raised significant revenue. They have the reasons for raising the revenue, but it's really time for school divisions to step up and fund their assets.
Any further speakers? Seeing none. Councillor Dobson, do you wish to close?
Yeah, I understand where everyone's coming from, but this is a facility that is available to everybody in St. James. So whether the school division funds it or whether the city funds it, I think it's very important that for the residents in St. James that there is a track that they can go to that is easy to use, soft on their feet, easy to run. The fact that the school division is going to put up a significant amount of money to do it, I think this is a project that should go forward.
With that, I'll call the question on this item. All in favor, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Chambers, Dobson, Durandwood, Eadie, Gilroy, Mays, Rollins, Santos, Wyatt.
Those opposed, please rise.
Councillors Duncan, Lukes, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 11, nays 3.
Okay. Notice of motion is passed. Next, we have a notice of motion moved by Councillor Wyatt, seconded by Councillor Orlikow, regarding the North American Strategy for Competitiveness and the Red River Basin. Your seconder is not present.
My understanding, my seconder is not present, therefore the matter can't be. I would like to move. I understand Councillor Bellotti is also away at the Red River Basin Commission. No, I'm just kidding. But I just wanted to say, Madam Speaker, that I would like to move suspension of the rules to allow us to discuss this now, because I think it's pertinent, its timing is good, and any more money we spend on these committees, I think, is questionable. So I request that. If it doesn't go forward, it comes back. If we don't suspend the rules now, it will come back to next council's meeting, just so you know, in February. But I'm requesting suspension of the rules. Thank you.
It is in order. I'm just clarify with the clerk, I believe that's an order. If your seconder isn't here, you can ask for suspension of the rules. Okay, to hear it today? It's a notice of motion. It's on the council agenda from last month. Mr. Clerk, go ahead.
So the motion before council is moved by Councillor Wyatt and seconded by Councillor Orlikow. Councillor Orlikow is not present. As a result, the motion cannot be considered today because Section 19 of the procedure bylaw is required that all motions shall be in writing and seconded. So the seconder is not present. Councillor Wyatt is proposing that Rule 19 be suspended to allow council to consider the motion today.
Point of
Councillor
clarification
Duncan.
here. Thank you very much. So just clarification on this. The move to suspend the rules is to debate the topic but not vote on it? Or would we be debating and voting today?
So the motion is, I believe Councillor Wyatt is to suspend Section 19 of the procedure bylaw, which requires a seconder. So then councillor would consider this motion without a seconder.
Yeah, we're just suspending the rules. So he wants to proceed with debating the motion today. Councillor Rollins?
Madam Speaker, I just want to point out that our member for the Red River Basin is also not here today. And so for that reason, I won't be supporting.
Okay, Councillor Rollins, that's perfectly fine. So you stand up or sit down if the vote's called. Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, I am the council representative for Red River
That's
Basin
right.
Commission.
Okay, thank you. With that, there is the request on the floor. It's in order. So I'll call for the question on suspension of the rules so we can proceed with debating the item today. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Contrary? All in favor, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Eady, Lukes, Rollins, Santos, Wyatt, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
Okay, those opposed, please rise.
Councillors Durand Wood, Gilroy, and Mays.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 11, nays 3.
Okay. Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeas 11, nays 3.
Yes. So we'll proceed with debating the item. Councillor Wyatt to introduce.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For those who watch on TV, may not have access to our agenda, I just want to read the motion, and that would really summate my comments. Moved by, and I want to thank Councillor Orlikow for seconding this. Unfortunately, he's not here today, but still thank him. Whereas, with Canadians standing strong and saying no to a voluntary embargo on personal and business travel into the United States of America since the outrageous comments by President Donald Trump, who called for the annexation of Canada to make Canada the 51st state of the USA. And whereas the Canadian people have implemented their own ban on travel into America, also due to the Canadian economy being dramatically and negatively impacted by President Trump's decision to abandon our historic relationship, including, for all intents and purposes, attacking the fabric and the spirit of all trade agreements with the United States, both bilateral agreements, Canada and the United States Free Trade Agreement, and multilateral agreements, Canada, Mexico, U.S. Free Trade Agreement, by placing tariffs on Canadian-made goods in an attempt to drive up the cost of goods produced in Canada and supplied to the American consumer. And whereas Winnipeg City Council has been completely out of step with the Canadian people as Council continues its membership within the American Free Trade Organization, known by the North American Strategy for Competitive, NASCO, which is based in Dallas, Texas, and costs the city of Winnipeg a minimum of $30,000 a year in membership costs, plus all related travel costs and expenses relating to the councillor appointed to the NASCO committee, in this case, Councillor Marcus Chambers. And whereas the City of Winnipeg is also a member of the Red River Basin Commission, which involves the ratepayers of Winnipeg having to pay for the representatives, namely, and I apologize to Councillor Chambers, in that sense, the motion, whereas not Councillor Bawadi, for trips into the states within the USA located just south of the Manitoba border, again, representing an insult to all the hardworking Canadians who have implemented their own embargo on travel into the United States. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership in NASCO be immediately cancelled by Winnipeg City Council. That number two, Winnipeg City Council cease compensating for any of the travel expenses related to travel into the United States in relation to the Red River Basin Commission, and that all things be done by the proper officers. I want to point out a couple things in the motion that are subtle points. Number one, we're not calling for cancellation of our membership in the Red River Basin Commission. This motion is not calling for that. I see the viability of the commission, and that any kind of relation, any kind of travel going on with regards to the Red River Basin Commission inside the province of Manitoba, I don't see any issue with that, Madam Speaker, is the travel into the United States. So I want to make a point we're not saying pulling out of the entire commission when it comes to the Red River Valley Basin Commission, because of the work that it does. I think is worthwhile, and I think it's important, especially with the watershed issues and the future of Lake Winnipeg, and all the work I know the mayor has been doing in relation to the treatment plant, and therefore the motion was written in this manner. Secondly, I would like to also personally add, as a member of council who has served on NASCO, and I want to thank the mayor for previous appointment to that it is a worthy organization, a very good organization. In no way, in shape, or form is this a comment on NASCO and the people and the staff of NASCO who are amazing. I want to make that very clear. What's very unfortunate, Madam Speaker, and I think many Canadians share, this is what's occurred south of the border, and the comments from the President. I never thought I would live to see a President of the United States possibly threatening the actual cancellation of the free trade agreement that the Americans pushed for along with us, but the Americans wanted to see with Canada and then later with Mexico. I would have thought maybe it would come out of Canada in the future if a certain political party got elected federally, or maybe out of Mexico, but never from the United States, who is really the winning partner in that agreement. I was not a fan in 1988, campaigned against, with all my fellow students, strongly, the great 88 debate, when it was a free trade debate against Brian Mulroney, John Turner. Well, Ed Broadbent didn't make an issue. He could have been the government of Canada. He chose not to, and he dropped the ball on that one. But I'll tell you what, Madam Speaker, I remember as a student standing with the other students outside the Fairmont where Mulroney was staying when he came to speak, and we rocked his car outside, right up with the Prime Minister at the side, and then later followed him to we were students, mind you, followed him to what was then the Crown Plaza Hotel, where we heckled him while he made a speech. We were so passionate about the future of the country. And that night when the election was lost and Mulroney got reelected, we were all gathered in Rideau Hall at the University of Winnipeg, and we all talked about which country we're moving to, because we felt very sad and depressed about the fact where our country was going. And I'd like to say this, for the record, Madam Speaker, I don't necessarily think we were necessarily that wrong, in the sense that since that time, industry after industry in this country has been affected by free trade negatively. Following the implementation of the free trade agreement, the entire Ontario economy tanked into a recession. It triggered a recession because of the closing of loss of 400,000 jobs, because of the closing of branch plants, which nobody had calculated or prepared for, by the way, which triggered the rest of the country to go into a recession that was so deep and profound that lasted 5 years in this country and affected Manitoba dramatically. We were the last to go into the recession, but we were also the last to come out, about 1995, 96. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, it affected a lot of families, working families, who took it on the chin. You know, for a lot of people who in the industries out there did very well, by the way, thank you very much, with being able to open up plants in Mexico, cut their labor costs dramatically, lay off workers in both Canada and the United States to do so. So I want to say, Madam Speaker, that there are parts of the Trump agenda which I don't necessarily disagree with. I want to thank President Trump, in this sense, of having woken up this nation to realize that we can be a nation again, and that we can make our own goods here, and we should have our own independent industrial strategy and economic strategy, a novel idea for this country. After World War II, up until then, we had ridden on the coattails economically, have tried our trade tied to Great Britain and the Empire. And then what we simply did after World War II is we, C.D. Howe moved us on to a policy, the great Canadian orchestrator of the new Canadian economy, for Mackenzie King, moved us into the economy of jumping on the coattails of the American economy, from one giant to the next. And now we see we're at it again. We're now jumping on the coattails of the Chinese Empire. But, that's Canadian foreign policy. I come back to the motion, Madam Speaker. Canadians today have said overwhelmingly that they are not traveling to the United States. This is not being mandated by the government of Canada or any government. Canadians are voluntarily doing this of their own will. And I think it speaks volumes to the people of our country, that sense of nationhood, the sense of national pride, that they're standing up to who they see really operating in the world scene today using the philosophy that I hope was stuck in the 19th century, the philosophy of the power of the big man on the block, the bully, right? The great power that can use gunboat diplomacy. I thought that age was over, Madam Speaker, and that we came over partly because we went through 2 world wars, we dropped 2 nuclear bombs, we created the United Nations, we created international peacekeepers. We created all these multilateral frameworks to try to maintain world peace, and it seems that we have somebody in the White House right now who wants to tear all that down, and God knows what it's going to be replaced with. Basically, you're going back. You're going back to the original version of what we saw that led to the 2 wars of the last century. Madam Speaker, Canadians are standing up to that. They're saying no to that agenda. Not that it's only a question of national pride. They're seeing the terrible results of and the divisions in that country. And I pray, Madam Speaker, that it's a warning to us that we, as a democracy, could easily see our institutions be eroded like this, especially when it comes to the influence of money, and money in its relation to the political arm of our society. And I think that's where the United States has gone wrong. And one of the things I just like to add is when I was on NASCO, and I had the opportunity to go to Washington, it was amazing to see a city that was planned at a time when they were not a great power, but as if they knew that they would become a great power. And I have the utmost respect, by the way, Madam Speaker, for the American people. They're an amazing people. And I have friends down there. And I feel so sorry for what they're going through. This has nothing to do with the American people. When I was in Washington, Madam Speaker, it was so sad because the people in Washington and the American people, they knew what the problem is. They know what it is. They know that their system has been taken over by the power of the corporation and big money. They've gone from being a democracy nationally to basically now an oligarchy, controlled by billionaires and their friends in elected office. And they know this is the problem. And they feel powerless to do anything about it. And it was extremely, we talked about it many, we talked about it many times, Madam
Okay,
Speaker.
we're ready to go on to other speakers.
I hope this support, and we stand by the Canadian people, Madam Speaker, and it gets passed today. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Rollins, followed by the Mayor, Councillor Chambers.
Madam Speaker, suspending travel to the United States right now is the wrong response to a very serious moment. It may feel righteous, Madam Speaker, it may feel satisfying, but it is not strategic, it is not responsible, it is actively undermining the work that actually protects our communities, our economy, and our democratic values. This is not a time for withdrawal, Madam Speaker. This is a time for engagement, hard, disciplined, eyes open, diplomacy, and engagement. Decisions made in Washington, in state capitals, and in city halls across the United States of America directly affect border communities, trade corridors, public safety, climate action, human rights, and the movement of people. Pretending otherwise ignores our families' relationship, our kinship relationships. Pretending otherwise, Madam Speaker, does not make us safer. It makes us irrelevant populists, something I'm trying to fight with every step I take, with every move I make. I have spent years building relationships, and Madam Speaker, so has Mayor Gillingham. And it is time this chamber actually knows the therapeutic brotherhood and sisterhood Mayor Gillingham has made. And it is time that story is told, if to only educate naive ears, Madam Speaker, that collaboration is no longer needed. City managers, house leaders, human rights advocates, Madam Speaker, across the United States have reached out, and I've had the pleasure of presenting alongside of them and meeting them. Those relationships matter, Madam Speaker, when things are difficult. Those relationships, especially when government's under pressure, especially when values are being tested. You do not influence power by turning your backs. You influence power by showing up, by putting the work in, by being present, by being relentless Canadians, Madam Speaker, and by speaking super plain to people who may not agree with you. And that, Madam Speaker, has always been the Canadian way, and that, Madam Speaker, is why I'm going to call for a recorded vote to make sure that this is a unanimous vote, that it continues to be the Winnipeg way. Walking away from the table does not send a message of strength. It sends a message that we're just unwilling to put in the hard work, especially when it gets harder. The impacts we're concerned about, the violent immigration enforcement that killed Renee Good, that killed Alex Pretty, who may kill more, the labor standards, the public safety cooperation, the climate rollbacks, the democratic erosion, Madam Speaker, the Hitler references that came out in early 2026 from the American government, they don't stop at the border, Madam Speaker. And you know what? They accelerate when serious people stop talking to one another. They accelerate. Mayors, the relationships that the mayor built, it was therapeutic, Madam Speaker, it was timely, and it continues to be. That is why I hope he takes on another different national role in addition to his mayoral role next term. And everyone around this table knows that he and I have been through it. But conflict, Madam Speaker, can be a creative catalyst. And this, Madam Speaker, is a reckless motion. They, Madam Speaker, the Americans, are dealing with homelessness. They're dealing with public health. They're dealing with infrastructure. They're dealing with migration in real time. Many of them are allies. Many of them are pushing back with their own systems, and we see that on the streets of cities that we've all been to, many of us. Cutting off engagement with them is not principled. It teaches our children nothing, Madam Speaker, in this moment. Diplomacy also, Madam Speaker, is not approval. It's not approval. Travel is not endorsement. Engagement, that's not silence. This motion would have us be silent, Madam Speaker. Not apply pressure, not build coalitions, not leverage relationship building, all things we need in this moment, Madam Speaker. I want a unanimous vote to be able to vigorously oppose this motion, Madam Speaker. And I want it to be recorded and standing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, followed by Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, I appreciate and agree with Councillor Rollins' passion on this. Yeah, this is the wrong time, the very wrong time in my mind, to be abandoning allies when it comes on the cusp, once again, of us as nations updating, I'll use that word loosely, CUSMA, whatever it's going to be, ultimately the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all of these trade relationships and the impact of them, they play out in our cities. They play out in our communities. It's about our businesses here, those involved in advanced manufacturing are those who make their products here and export them or import products or elements of products to make what they're making here. And so though it's the federal government and to a degree provincial governments that really deal with the trade relationship, at the end of the day, this affects our residents, our businesses, our our men and women who are employed or whose jobs are threatened because of changes in trade relationships. NASCO is an ally. We have been a member, the City of Winnipeg has been a member since day one in 1994. NASCO has been around for 32 years. It started initially really as a relationship entity that could foster good trade relationship along the I-29 corridor, the mid-continent trade corridor. It's expanded beyond that. The president of NASCO, Tiffany Melvin, outstanding leader, has been at the helm since day one. I've had the privilege of serving on that board and understand and appreciate the relationships that can be built. Ms. Melvin, in fact, relationships have been so established here throughout Winnipeg and through Manitoba. She sits on the Centerport board. She is a board member of Centerport, directly impacting, obviously, the work that is happening here in our community. That relationship that, Tiffany Melvin, for one, can leverage her connections and her network of connections as a board member on Centerport will only enhance and the opportunities that all those that would establish businesses in Centerport, their relationship with trading partners in the U.S. and through Mexico. So now at a really critical time in Canada's trade relationship with the United States and Mexico, now is not the time to abandon those who are allies and who are working with us and have worked with us for many, many years. And so I think it's a very important investment, a good investment. It's a framework, a relationship of stability that has been stable for 32 years over the uncertain times. Because often what happens is that it's behind the scenes that the work and the relationships and the conversations happen where you've got businesses talking to groups like NASCO. Businesses are on NASCO's board. You've got local businesses talking to NASCO. NASCO takes their voice of businesses and the local community to Washington, to Mexico City, to Ottawa as well. And they have a standing and a good relationship with the policymakers at the national level, in every level of government. Now, the effect to which it would, can positively impact the current president of the United States, I mean, that's anyone's guess. The individual seems to do what he wants to do when he wants to do it, usually at 2 in the morning on X or some other social media platform. But the relationships, I think, are very important. And now, at an uncertain time, is the time to maintain the relationships that are allies, the relationships that seek the best in our nation as well. So I will be voting, I'll be glad to stand up and vote against this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Chambers, followed by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to provide some background information with respect to both of these committees that I've been appointed to by Mayor Gillingham. The Red River Basin Commission actually held their annual general meeting here in Winnipeg on January 12th to the 14th, which saw delegates from Manitoba, North Dakota, and Minnesota here in our city to discuss water stewardship. The Red River Basin Commission is not singular to Winnipeg, but also the cities in Manitoba and towns in Manitoba along the Red River, such as Morris, Manitoba and Selkirk, Manitoba, that impact the health of Lake Winnipeg. This important work must continue in collaboration with our partners on both sides of the border. With respect to NASCO, NASCO's primary focus is to advocate for and improve the multimodal transportation corridors that link Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, specifically the CanMex corridor and the international mid-continent trade corridor. Winnipeg is a critical northern gateway to this network, including a network that will see us going further north into the ports of Churchill to continue trade into European countries. The CanMex corridor, this trade route officially designated the governments of Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, which runs from Winnipeg through Regina, Calgary, and Edmonton, connecting to the U.S. at ports of entry like Sweetgrass, Montana. For Winnipeg, this is a formal recognition of its strategic position. The work being done at Centerport is part of the relationship building that NASCO is doing for the city of Winnipeg. NASCO recently held sessions outside of Manitoba, actually outside Canada in Mexico City, the same period of time, January 12th to the 14th, of which I attended the Red River Basin Commission and was unable to attend the meeting in NASCO, but have heard back from stakeholders here in the city of Winnipeg reporting back on the meetings that were held in Mexico City. NASCO's next gathering or meeting is in May of 2026 in Regina, Saskatchewan. We must continue promoting and integrating Winnipeg's corridor to make sure that the work in this sphere is done and moves Canada towards a new trade agreement for North America, despite the new trading reality with some of our trading partners. Winnipeg's business community that are part of the Canadian manufacturing and export have a key interest in ensuring their interests are well represented, and NASCO offers that opportunity. NASCO provides Winnipeg's business leaders and government officials and economic development agencies like EDW or Economic Development and Tourism Winnipeg to collaborate with their counterparts in the U.S. and in Mexico states. This network helps identify new market opportunities, addresses regional challenges collectively, and attracts investments by promoting an integrated Winnipeg region corridor. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Lukes, and then Councillor Eady.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to speak directly to the question of NASCO and why withdrawing from it would be a mistake, not just in theory, but in practice, and not just for Canada, but specifically for Winnipeg and Manitoba. We're living in a moment here, Madam Speaker, where isolationism, protectionism, and nativism are no longer abstract ideas. They are real focuses shaping policy, trade, and economic decisions across North America. And the reality is that these factors don't hurt large, self-contained economies first. They hurt trade-dependent cities and regions like ours. Winnipeg sits at the crossroads of North America trade. Our economy depends on integrated supply chains, cross-border transportation, agriculture, manufacturing, and logistics. Decisions made elsewhere in the United States, Mexican regions, and federal capitals directly affect jobs and investments here at home. NASCO is one of the few forums where cities, provinces, states, industries, and post-secondary institutions sit at the same table across borders. It isn't a federal trade body. It doesn't bind us to policy, and it doesn't tell us what to do. It gives us access to relationships and early insights at a time when trade decisions are becoming more political and less predictable. Pulling out doesn't protect Winnipeg from protectionism. It doesn't shield us from an Buy America policy, border slowdowns, or supply chain disruptions. It simply means we give up our seat at the table and hope that others make decisions that work in our favor. If nativism is telling people to look inward, our response should be practical and confident, showing up, engaging, and standing for our local interest. NASCO isn't about ideology, it's about keeping goods moving, supporting workforce development, and protecting competitiveness for cities like Winnipeg. The cost of staying involved is modest, participation is voluntary, but the cost of leaving is strategic. Lost influence, lost intelligence, and lost relationships are exactly at the wrong time here and now. And if we're serious about standing up for Winnipeg and Manitoba and Canada, then we shouldn't just maintain our relationships. We should double down. I'd recommend sending our mayor to represent Winnipeg at NASCO. That sends a clear message. We're engaged, we're confident, and we're not backing down. It shows leadership, protects our interests, and makes it clear that Winnipeg intends to stay at the table. And we intend to stay strong, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Duncan, next Councillor Lukes, followed by Councillor Eady.
I love these passionate speeches because, I mean, I don't know what to add to this, but I guess what I'll add is, and I think I'll just bring it right home to the grassroots level, is we all know that communication is one of the best tools to coming to a solution, or to at least understanding the issue. We deal with our residents' calls all the time. We know that if we communicate, we can come to some kind of conclusion and have a better understanding. You know, everything that everyone has said here today so far, I'm in total agreement with it. And I too, like Councillor Rowlands, wants to see a unanimous vote on it. And I don't know if it's because I'm wearing red today, but I'm inspired to quote our Prime Minister, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." And we need to be at the table. So.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councillor Eady, followed by Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I kind of take, I just want to start with this motion. I don't appreciate a motion that somehow you're naming who's on the committee, because over the years, we know that Councillor Wyatt has been on the NASCO as appointed by the mayor to undertake and be on that. Many other councillors have been involved, with Councillor Fielding being the first member of NASCO from the city of Winnipeg. At the time that Gary Doer and some American state people and Mexicans decided that there should be a NASCO, and it was right around the time that we were building, the province was moving forward on Centerport North, and the city was asked actually to get in on that, but the province ended up paying for the sewer service out to Centerport North, and then we couldn't sell water, Madam Speaker. But so ultimately, though, it's good to have a dialogue. But I would also like to point out, with the Red River Basin, the appointees are done, those appointments are done by all of council, as you know, Madam Speaker. The mayor's not appointing anybody to that one. That is a vote of all of council in moving forward, whoever, and there's an alternative, right? So with that one. So I just wanted to point those out. Yeah, we need to continue to have dialogue, and you know, there are a lot of people in the United States, Mexico, and Canada who are totally opposed to Mr. Trump, and I would never applaud anything he does, because he doesn't care about anybody, really. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I'll be voting no to this particular motion. It just doesn't make sense. And I'll just conclude, you know, naming people kind of demonize them, saying they're spending money, and we heard from a presenter who's talking about us spending money. It's an interesting thing, Madam Speaker, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councillor Gilroy.
Madam Speaker, this takes years, if not decades, to build these relationships. In the moments that we're debating this, we could be just tearing it all down with this vote, Madam Speaker. So I do not support supporting this motion. We got a lot of work to do on both sides of the border, and I think it's really critical that we are communicating and, most importantly, connecting with our neighbors on shared values, on shared interests that are going to support our local economy, Madam Speaker. So I hope that my councillor colleagues, I agree with many of the speakers here today, a lot of great conversation on this, and I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt, to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I want to state I respect, other than Councillor E's comments, which he decided to go personal, I respect all the comments made on the floor, Council. I disagree, respectfully disagree, but I respect the opinion that has been expressed. There has been, if you read about politics, which some of us do, you know, the theory around bubbles that exist at high levels in terms of leadership, that we get so caught up, especially when we're in a position of making decisions, but at the higher level, I'm talking when you have a cabinet or like an executive committee, and that you get caught up inside that world, and that a disconnect for some reason forms between that world and the populace. Whether that is a true theory or not is a very interesting one. Because I really think on this matter, Madam Speaker, I think the Canadian people are right. I think they're sending a signal. I think there's a lot of Canadians who would love to be able to go and keep that line of communication open, to be able to go to the States, whether it be for purpose of pleasure, traveling, or for other reasons. But they have elected not to do so. They have done it voluntarily. And I would have thought that this council would have recognized that, or would recognize that, and stand with the Canadian people and with the people of Manitoba, who are sacrificing and not going forward with trips into the United States. And sometimes it could be trips related to business, not just pleasure. And I can say, Madam Speaker, that it has sent a strong message to the Americans in terms of our concerns with what's been happening with their president. And it should go without saying, Madam Speaker, that we have been a loyal ally of the United States. We were a loyal ally prior to the values that we hold. It was the Canadians, prior to the Americans arriving in the scene in World War I, that already had taken Vimy Ridge. It was the Canadians that ended up in basically concentration camps in 1939 when Hong Kong fell, victims of the Empire of Japan, which the Americans later faced. You know, Madam Speaker, it was Canadian. It was a Canadian that came up with the concept that kept two allies in the 1960s from going war in NATO with the peacekeepers when Turkey decided to invade Cyprus, Lester Pearson. It was the Canadians, Madam Speaker, who helped get about a half a dozen Americans out of Tehran when the Ayatollah and his followers stormed the American embassy and saved these got these Americans out under the nose of the Iranian authorities of the new revolutionary regime. We have been a loyal ally time and time again. We supported the Americans going into Afghanistan when the Twin Towers were attacked. Madam Speaker, but to hear the President of the United States stand up and basically, for whatever you think of the former Prime Minister, to call him a governor, the future governor of Canada, to refer to us as the 51st state. And, you know, think about it, Madam Speaker, that it was a Canadian worker who has taken it on the chin, for better or for worse, no different in some ways than the American worker with regards to the implementation of these free trade agreements, which have a downward pressure on wages and benefits. And now, once again, it's the Canadian worker who's taking on the chin now that we've linked our economy so closely together that is being directly affected by the antics and the policies coming out of Washington today. And Madam Speaker, it's unfortunate that at a time when we should be standing beside our Canadian workers and their families, that Council, yes, it is symbolic. Yes, it is sending a message, but this is the time for us to do that. If there's not any other time, I don't know when it will be. And Madam Speaker, somebody has said this motion is reckless. I would argue it's reckless not to stand by the Canadian people at such a time. And that is unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that councillor after councillor, including the mayor, spoke against this. And again, I respect their position, but I disagree, respectfully disagree, that we should stand by the people of Canada at this low point, knowing full well that, like any storm, Madam Speaker, the storm will subside. And hopefully we can repair the damage done by the president who is there today. No doubt about it. And no doubt in my mind, as I said when I opened up the debate on this matter, Madam Speaker, as a former member of NASCO, how important and how great the staff there are of NASCO, how great the organization is. But I think it's time, Madam Speaker, the issue at hand has overtaken that. And we have to stand beside our residents who have sent a clear and strong message to the American people and to the President of the United States that we are boycotting activity and travel to the United States. And I think we should also support that effort as well, Madam Speaker. I think at the very least, and yes, it is about, Councillor Luke says it's about communication. Well, this is communicating. This is us sending a message, strong and clear, that we are not in favor or in any way, shape, or form supportive of what this president has been doing, and we feel the damage that he is doing is unfortunate and has to be reversed. And the American people, who I have great admiration for, who I think you're seeing kind of rising up in certain cities across the United States, will hopefully take to greater numbers in the future to do more of that peacefully. So, Madam Speaker, I hope this motion passes. If it doesn't, I think that's very unfortunate. And I look to that leadership bubble and wonder if not that theory possibly is true in terms of what some have written pertaining to that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I'll call the question on the notice of motion. All in favor?
Is that a
Please
recorded
rise.
vote?
It's a call for a recorded vote, yes? Okay, all in favor, please rise.
Councillor Wyatt.
Those opposed, please rise.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durand-Wood, Eady, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 1, nays 13.
Notice of motion is defeated. Now moving on to bylaws, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the following bylaws be read at first time. Bylaw number 1, 2026, bylaw number 5, 2026.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 1 of 2026, bylaw number 5 of 2026.
All in favor?
I move.
Oh, pardon me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I move the following bylaws be read a second time. Bylaw number 76, 2025, bylaw number 131, 2025.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 76 of 2025, bylaw number 131 of 2025.
Mr. Mayor,
I move that bylaws number 76, 2025, and 131, 2025 be read a third time and be ordered to signed and sealed.
all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
I move, Madam Speaker, that bylaw number 6, 2025 be read a first time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 6 of 2026.
I move, Madam Speaker, that bylaw number 6, 2026 be read a second time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Bylaw number 6 of 2026.
And Madam Speaker, I move that Rule 52, the procedure bylaw number 50, 2007 be suspended and bylaw number 6, 2026 be read a third time and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. We have a motion that's circulated. Motion 1, moved by Councillor Wyatt, seconded by Councillor Santos. It's regarding a park naming. It'll be an automatic referral to the Executive Policy Committee. We'll now have question period for the Mayor. Questions for the Mayor. Councillor Wyatt, followed by Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise. I would like to just recently at the Standing Committee of Finance, there was a report that came forward pertaining to property and development. It had to do with expenditures and the need to move funds around to make that department whole. One part of it, though, was pertaining to a grant of $350,000 be approved to reimburse the Southern Chiefs Organization for the estimated cost of permits and planning fees pertaining to the project going on at the Bay. My question to the Mayor is that this project was, the City of Winnipeg has been committed to this project by the previous council to the amount of $10 million, is my understanding, in terms of deferred things like this, property permits, and as well future property taxes. My understanding as well is that the original project cost was to be $130 million. That has since risen to $200 million, and since, as of last year, gone to $310 million. from a total of $130 million. I would ask the question of the mayor, is there anything that the mayor could share with this chamber on what he knows of what the status of this project is now and where the costs are going? Because I'm hearing, and I don't want to base anything in terms of what I'm hearing on the street in the business community, but I'm hearing certain things out there that cause me concern. And therefore, I'd like to know if there's anything that's come forward through his office or through the senior management offices of the city, in light of the fact that we have committed ourselves to $10 million of public money to support this project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to the council. Yes, this project overseen by and kind of owned by the Southern Chiefs organization is the transformation, the complete changeover of the Old Bay building, the Weywinney project. I have no recent update related to the project or the project's cost. And yes, council, through various votes, has provided various funding, either directly or through waiving of permits, some street work in the area, the waiving of tipping fees as well to assist with the project. But there has been no recent update that I have got related to the costs that I've received.
Thank you for the answer, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I wasn't going to ask a question on this until about a week and a half ago. I've been thinking about researching it. About a week and a half ago, the CEO parted company with the Southern Chiefs organization. And I guess the question must be, is the mayor prepared to direct the proper officers of the city and possibly even the city auditor to look into the situation here in light of the fact that the costs have nearly tripled already, and we're hearing that the costs have possibly gone up again, to see what's going on?
Madam Speaker, SCO's project, I don't know that it would be the subject of the city's auditor at this point. We do have ongoing dialogue between our CAO and our respective department leaders related to aspects of the Weywinney project, and we'll continue that dialogue, and we'll start from there.
Councillor Wyatt.
Knowing that it's an arm's length project, however, we are on the table for $10 million. Can the mayor commit that we will not contemplate any further subsidization of the project until we know what's going on, or at the very least not commit to an expansion until we have answers to why these costs have nearly tripled and possibly gone up more?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, there has been no, to my knowledge, recent requests for additional, outside of what the council referenced, additional contributions to the SCO project. If there is something that comes in, council will be able to deal with that. If there's concerns related to an escalation of costs of that project, that's certainly something council can deal with at that time.
Thank you. Next set of questions, Councillor Mays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the mayor is familiar with the sorry state of the city's gravel backlanes from his days as a St. James Ward councillor. Two items have recently taken place that have caused me some concern about this. Number one, there were some references recently to the strategic plan. There are only two items out of the 39-pronged strategic plan that have had no action since we passed it. One of them is the only one that pertains to gravel lanes, a provision about trying to improve local improvements for gravel lanes. Additionally, if you look at the budget, you will see one of the understated things in the budget is that the budget for concrete alleys is doubling from 12 million to 24 million over a period of about 4 years. Unfortunately, there's only an increase of about 300,000 for gravel lanes, and there was to be $1 million a year put into the Pulva mixer. I'm now advised by staff they're simply not going to spend that, which is a concern. It's one of the few things that we're actually doing for gravel lanes. So I wonder, in light of those two things, the strategic plan not being pursued and the Pulva mixer initiative not being pursued, if the mayor or his designee could sit down with the CAO and myself, credit to our new CAO who came out on a delightful driving tour of some of St. Vital's decrepit gravel back lanes. My thanks to him. I wonder if the mayor or his designee would sit down with the CAO and myself to discuss what we can do. Our current philosophy We have to keep them in a passable condition. Therefore, they all must be passable, and there is no problem. Simply doesn't reflect reality. Many of them aren't passable anymore, and it's not just my ward, it's in other wards. So I wonder if the mayor could undertake to meet or have his designee meet with the CAO and myself.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, yeah, glad to meet with the council. I think it'd be important perhaps for the Public Works Chair to be part of that discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Next committee. Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll introduce the report of January 13th, 2026 and move adoption of consent agenda with the exception of item 12 that I see a motion is before us.
One has been pulled. I'll call the question on 2. Just pulled to, sorry, Councillor Duncan, you mentioned, is it 12?
12, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, I'll call the question on 2 through 11, 13 through 15. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Madam Clerk?
Item 1, agreement for services with Winnipeg Airports Authority.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan to introduce the item.
Yes, I'll hear from my colleagues here, however, just to hopefully preemptively say similar things. This is an excellent opportunity for the Winnipeg Airports Authority area, West Winnipeg and Manitoba as a whole. Investment that council made in bringing in that feeder main into this region has paid off with potential investment and inevitable investment in the future here in this lands west of the existing airport there. However, I will give my time here to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, similar to what Councillor Duncan said, the reason I pulled this is just to highlight the potential that is now unlocked because Council made the decision years ago to put water and sewer pipes in those lands west of the airport, which is Centerport South lands. We knew that based on a report, I don't remember what year the report came out, but it was a report that highlighted the fact that we will not have enough service industrial lands to really grow our economy unless we service Centerport South. And Councillor Eadie earlier today referenced, the history of NASCO, and part of the history of NASCO includes Centerport. And the servicing was made available in Rosser, the arm of Rosser, and if you watch what's happened in the north part of Centerport, which is the arm of Rosser, it's really developed quickly, and there's a lot of industry there, some of it that has moved from Winnipeg into Rosser. Be that as it may, we are now playing a bit of catch-up, but we are unlocking the lands for development in Centerport South, which is west of the airport. So this announcement really by Winnipeg Airport Authority that they are moving on developing of their land and the property they own on the west side of the runways, the west side of the airport, is good news, and I think it's the first of more to come. There are times when we have to go ahead and make an investment to get a return on that investment. Investing in the water and sewer servicing was a priority for me as a city councillor during my time as a city councillor for St. James. And I'm really glad to see that because of the shared decision we made as a council, that we now have, we now see the fruit of our labor beginning to be borne out here. It's good news with more to come.
Any further speakers? Councillor Lukes?
I'd like to speak to this also. This is an excellent initiative for whoever lands at the Airport Authority's land. Yeah, and I think the mayor is being a bit modest here on his efforts in this. He was the chair of finance in the last term of council when this came for a vote. And not everyone in this room voted for that budget. It was part of the budget. But there was a lot of talk. There wasn't a lot of talk under the former mayor about economic development, but it did come from the chair of finance and a few others of us there. And this is a spectacular example of the benefit of a pipe and funding a pipe and the results that'll happen. I sit on the, I guess it's the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region right now, what's left of it, and really see how regional planning and regional development is important, and this investment is going to reap the city of Winnipeg much benefit. So very pleased.
Thank you, Councillor Lukes. Councillor Duncan, back to you for close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You can call the question.
Okay. All in favor of item 1? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Madam Clerk?
Item 12, zoning agreement amendment, 1976, 1978, 1980, 1982, 1984, 1986, 1988, 1992, 1994, and 1996, St. Mary's Road, ZAA 9 of 2025.
Thank you. We do have an amending motion to go with this. Councillor Duncan to introduce, and then Councillor Chambers, the mover of motion 2. Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you very much. I will keep my comments short here. This is a long-standing development dating back, I believe, to 2018 in the Riel Community Committee area. Agreement with the residents and developer at the time reflected a 4-story complex, for lack of getting into direction, that would run to the point of single-family housing, at which point it would transition down to a height of 26 feet, which would represent 2-story townhomes. Obviously, times have changed. Executive Policy Committee heard this, and Councillor Lukes put forward an amendment to allow for a development of up to 35 feet, which is the allowable height of a single-family home, rather than 2-story townhouses. The reasons for this that the committee listened to and ultimately agreed with were that it would infringe less on the existing single-family homes on Mardina Crescent, and that it would actually create a significant distance buffer from those homes. I do understand with this motion that there is further consultation that is being requested. I mean, this touches on the fact that friendly reminder to any developer that community consultation goes a long way. My understanding is that there was a significant amount of community consultation back in 28, and maybe not so much this time around. And this has led to residents holding Riel Committee to a 6-hour public hearing. I'd be amendable to this motion, but I'd like to hear from my council colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Chambers on amending motion 2 and the main item.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, so the developer had brought their development plans back to Riel Community Committee to make some amendments to their design. At that hearing, it was decided that we would continue on with the decision that was made in September of 2018. And that decision went forward to PP&D, which then went to EPC. At EPC, there was discussion that talked about, removal of the townhouses to maintain a tree buffer, but then building the building size to 35 feet. There has been no discussion with the community, so this motion is recommending that we bring it back to Riel Community Committee, where the developer will have the opportunity to speak with the community with respect to the design that they've now come up with that puts the building further away from the houses on Mardina Drive, as well maintaining a tree buffer that will, impact sightlines from the houses on Mardina Drive onto their property on Norman Avenue, as well maintaining trees behind, to the north of this development that abuts Hanteloff Park. So this motion is again, bringing it back to Riel Community Committee, where the developer will have the opportunity to speak with the community. Again, community consultation is very much needed in situations where the community is part of the development. They are living there, and they should be the ones that have an input on what is neighboring their properties. So I'm asking for council to vote unanimously to bring this back to Community Committee where we can have further robust discussions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Lukes, followed by Councillor Wyatt.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very supportive of Councillor Chambers' amendment. In 2018, I was the councillor for this area. Actually, before 2018, I was the Winnipeg Trails Coordinator, and I worked with the Hentelef Foundation and UD Hentelef to increase trees, volunteered, supported tree plantings, launched International Trail Day in Hentelef Park, worked with the Norman Park Residents Association, the Van Hall Residents Association to complete a pathway and a connection. So my history with this area goes back as area councillor and also for preservation of green space and connecting pathways in the neighborhood. So I was part of the initial consultation back in 2018. Then it was an election and there was a ward boundary review, and I was no longer part of this ward. So the developer did come forward and wanted to increase density in the neighborhood just recently at the Riel Community Committee meeting. He currently is approved for approximately 72 units. I brought a compromise with the 72 units would have a buffer of 25 feet to the, I believe there's 7 residential homes. So I brought a compromise forward at the Executive Policy Committee asking that the buffer be 73 feet instead of 25 feet to these 7 or 9 homes that would back onto, and to allow the developer to have an extra 9 feet, the same height as in a residential zoning of 35 feet. So that's the motion I brought forward. Councillor Chambers, always being the statesman that he is and the diplomat that he is, we came together to agree that, yes, have the developer go out, do a community consultation, show them what he's proposing to build with the same density he's approved at, no more, and at the community committee that plan approval is required to occur, the community committee can decide at that point on this. It's a compromise, right? It's a compromise. Give the residents more space between the property line and the development. Give the developer 9 feet to do the same density, and hopefully everyone can come to an agreement. So I'm fully supportive of Councillor Chambers' motion, and I ask that everyone here do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt.
Madam Chair, I sometimes wonder if I maybe missed my calling in life to be an investigative reporter like Carl Bernstein or a private investigator. I had to ask a lot of questions in the Standing Committee on this item. And I was able to obtain some information, but then it was a question of, well, what kind of questions do you ask, to get the information that clearly was being withheld, but did come forward at the Standing Committee after the questions were asked. It's my understanding, Madam Speaker, that what is taking place in this situation, which is unfortunate, and I want to also preface that mistakes are made at the staff level, made politically, but the important thing is that when a mistake is made, that we basically say that this is what was done, and it's unfortunate, and that, we have to take corrective measures to address that mistake. But we should treat everyone the same. And where I'm going with this, Madam Speaker, is that if somebody is issued if somebody goes to the city, for example, build a garage or anything like that, and has not pulled a permit, we as a city come down very hard on them. We apply the zoning bylaws of the city, and we like to think we applied equally. It appears, unfortunately, in this situation, the developer may have gotten a situation where he got issued a permit to build a building that was 20 feet beyond where he had agreed to build it in terms of its impact on the residents. More concerning is the fact that the city, which issued the permit, which let it go, appears not to be willing to basically say, yes, we are part of the mistake here as well. In other words, there may be a liability cost to the city. The question I have to ask is whether or not we're doing this consultation for the sake of consultation with the residents, or are we doing it so that we can avoid any kind of legal liability, which may have to be coming our way, in terms of the fact that we issued a development permit and building permit on a site 20 feet beyond what was approved by the previous community committee and this council. This is concerning, Madam Speaker, and I hope my understanding of the issue is totally incorrect. That's why I'm prefacing it throughout my discussion here. This is my understanding. And again, I'm not pointing any fingers. People make mistakes, Madam Speaker. But it's better for us to say this is the mistake made, this is liability cost to the city, this is what it's going to cost the developer to honor his original commitment to the community, not to beyond those 20 feet, which I understand is a buffer, and then to be able to pull back and honor that, Madam Speaker, rather than saying, okay, yes, you can go ahead and build, we're going to have this consultation, just for the sake of massaging the issue, which could be argued is what could be done, is being done now. So I would prefer that this matter, Madam Chair, be taken back to the committee and reconsidered in light of what's happening. I could be wrong. Well, no, it's the motion right now, my understanding is we're amending it for consultation, but it's still going forward. Okay, well, I'm glad that I put these concerns on the record. But no, if it's going to plan approval, I want clarification on that from the clerks. What is the understanding of the motion then? Where is this going forward if the motion is passed? Is the report carried as we have it today before us?
If the motion is passed, Councillor, the item before council would be amended in accordance with the motion and passed.
Okay, so my understanding is the only thing that's subject to it is the plan approval and a community committee, which is standard. So we are approving the subdivision today, the changes. Okay, that's good to know.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Chambers, do you wish to close on your amending motion?
So again, consultation is critically important for developments to happen. Making sure that residents have a voice in what will be built around them. And again, this is going back to the, in reference in the motion, it's going back to the Director of Planning and Property with respect to the proposed plans. But the community consultation does need to happen. With that, Madam Speaker, you can call the question.
Thank you. I do, Councillor Duncan, any close for you, sir? For Councillor?
Thank you very much. Just some clarification here to the councillor from Transcona's comments. The permits that were issued that went approximately 20 feet past the point, in the documentation, you'll see that the pathway is noted that separates the single-family housing from the proposed site. The pathway was the marker incorrectly, but regardless of that, the pathway was noted as the marker. So, easy to place blame on whomever signed off on the permits, but the pathway was the marker, which, yes, does not line up with the corner house there on Mardina. So just wanted to point that out. And just for further clarification here, perhaps, Madam Speaker, the plan approval for this would still be heard at Riel. This is not something like the part that we're considering right now in the P&D reports we're voting on, but at the end of the day, the community consultation piece must take place, and then the committee will again consider it at Riel. Thank you.
That's right. Okay, all in favor of amending motion 2, please rise. Amending motion 2, please rise. That was put forward by Councillor Chambers.
His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durand-Wood, Eadie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, and Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma.
Those opposed, please rise.
Councillor Wyatt.
The vote, Madam Speaker, yeas 13, nays 1.
Amending motion 2 passes, and now the main item as amended. All in favor? Contrary? Contrary? And that's carried. Councillor Wyatt, would you like to be noted in opposition? Okay. Councillor Chambers, thank you. In opposition. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're now going to take a recess.
Madam Speaker, would you be open to hearing the bylaws?
No, we have question period as well, so maybe after we can. We'll now take a recess. The media, I'm sure the mayor will be in a media scrum, so let's give him 10 minutes, and then we'll proceed up for, or we could take the photo. We have a photo. Okay, let's take the photo first. Thank you. So councillors, if we can proceed upstairs to the foyer, Mayor's foyer, for Black History Month, I'd like to take a group shot. Thank you. And, okay, we'll come back at 1:15, please. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm reconvening the council meeting of January 29th, 2026. We're on the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. Councillor Duncan, over to you for bylaws.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move that the following bylaws be read a first time. Bylaw number 2, 2026, 3, 2026, 4, 2026, 7, 2026, 8, 2026, and 9, 2026.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 2 of 2026, bylaw number 3 of 2026, bylaw number 4 of 2026, bylaw number 7 of 2026, bylaw number 8 of 2026, and bylaw number 9 of 2026.
Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll move that the following bylaws be read a second time. Bylaws number 68, 2025, 86, 2025, and 92 of 2025.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 68 of 2025, bylaw number 86 of 2025, bylaw number 92 of 2025.
And Madam Speaker, I'll move that the bylaws numbered 68, 2025, 86, 2025, 92, 2025 be read a third time and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Madam Speaker, I'll move that the bylaws number 10 of 2026 be read a first time.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 10 of 2026.
I'll move that bylaw number 10 of 2026 be read a second time.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Bylaw number 10 of 2026.
And I'll move that the Rule 50, parentheses 2 of the procedure bylaw number 50 of 2007 be suspended and the bylaw number 10 of 2026 be read a third time and ordered to be signed and sealed.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. We'll now have question period under this committee. Any questions for Chair Councillor Duncan? Okay, next is the Standing Policy Committee on Water and Waste and the Environment. We have no reports today, no motions, no bylaws. So we'll get right into question period. Any questions for our Chair, Councillor Eadie? Councillor Lukes?
Sure. I'm just wondering if Councillor Eadie has any update on what happened at the water treatment plant, or not at the water treatment plant, at the North End treatment plant, on the pipe that broke around before Christmas, I guess it was. Do you have any updates on that, or are we expecting a report to come, or I'm just curious?
Madam Speaker, that is a good question, and the incident did not create a requirement for a report to council in terms of the accidental breaking of a feeder water main while undertaking the work of connecting a potable water supply to the new North End Water Pollution Control Center. The incident did happen, and it was really awful that it happened. There was an investigation. I'm not sure what the results were as to who might have been responsible, that some equipment digging down ruptured the feeder water main. But that feeder water main, there was the problem of cleaning up all the ice and water and everything, and that was done fairly expediently, although not fast enough for the public. But what had happened was it was repaired. And what they were also able to turn off some shut-off valves in other places because of redundancy in our water system. They were able to stop the water flowing to that feeder main, but water was redirected and ended up serving the people. But there was, for a slight moment, or for a little while, there was some lower pressure because of the change of the stream of water going to the various buildings that need water. And so it was repaired, and I don't know where the money came from, but Water and Waste does have money in its programs to deal with water main breaks, and thus was done. And finally, it seems the fix takes a little while longer because after they fix the feeder main of water, they have to make sure that no bacteria accidentally shows up in that system before they can start using that pipe. So they had to close off lanes in order to go and test that water before they can fill the hole that was dug. The water that was to be supplied to the new plant was completed as well. So there is no report, but that's the essential details. The only thing we don't know is like a detailed analysis of how that happened, that a piece of equipment accidentally hit the feeder main.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, next committee is the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I introduced the report dated January 9, 2026, and move adoption of the consent agenda items number 1 through 4.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. No motions, no bylaws. We're right into question period. Any questions for a chair for Councillor Santos? Okay. Next is Standing Policy Committee on Public Works. Councillor Lukes.
I'd like to introduce the report and move adoption of consent agenda items 1 and 2.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, now into question period. Any questions? Councillor Mays, followed by Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A question that perhaps could also have been posed to Councillor Brawadi if he were here from Finance, but I'll pose it to Councillor Lukes. Tomorrow, the Riel Community Committee will be considering a motion I'm putting forward about getting a review done of the various city play structures that are on school division land or that are adjacent to school properties, or in the odd case of the Hatcher School straddling the line between city and school division property. I don't know if, and getting a condition update on each of those facilities. All of us get the annual update on play structures in our wards, of course, and their conditions, so this is trying to pull together all of that. I know Councillor Lukes shares my view that the new schools should get play structures funded by the province, and I know she has, to her credit, put some money toward some of the older schools. Bairdmore leaps to mind, but just want to get her take on the feasibility of doing some review of the city play structures that are either on school property, I know Darwin School has that, or are adjacent to school property like HS Paul in Councillor Chambers' ward.
Sure. So, I mean, I can speak to this, maybe not so much from the Public Works perspective, but from the perspective of having been a fundraiser for many years before being elected, raising funding for play structures. Play structures are one of the absolute hardest things to raise funding for, and it basically boils down to a city-province school. What I've found in the last 15 years is I used to find schools would put funding in, but they're not putting funding in anymore. Like the school division would put funding in, or the individual schools would put funding in. But now basically it's up to, you know, the bake sales, which is ridiculous because some of these structures I think are licensed to print money. They're so expensive and you can't get them anywhere else but from the structure companies, which is fine. But yeah, I totally think, Councillor Mays, your timing on this review is very timely because I think the province has got 4 or 5 more schools, new schools in the queue. I know myself and former MLA John Ray supported a Cole South Point. We did it together. I see the province has put some into Bairdmore. I'm putting some into Bairdmore. It's on city property. Now I've got another one completely on provincial property, which I'm willing to put some in if the MLA matches it, and then another brand new school. So in the big picture of what its structure costs to the cost of a school, I think there's ways that we could figure this out. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I look forward to your report or motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Wyatt?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, the Chair of Public Works. My question is, Councillor Eadie has, I think, spoken to the issues facing the city and our water and waste challenges very frankly and openly to the citizens of Winnipeg. Very proud of his leadership on that file, as difficult as it may be. My question, Madam Chair, is pertaining to the challenges facing the North End today, specifically Arlington Bridge. And I guess I asked the question along these lines, that back in 2008, when we had the massive economic slowdown, there was a initiative of the federal government, which was frankly brilliant. We were fortunate to have Prime Minister Harper there at the time, who understood the gravity of the 2008 slowdown globally and the implications that if money was not primed into the economy immediately, that we were facing a scenario potentially of recession, possibly depression type slowdown economically. And one of the things he insisted upon, the federal government insisted upon at the time, was they got money out to the municipalities, but they wanted what they called shovel-ready projects, if you recall. And what we found ourselves in here in Winnipeg was a unique situation that we didn't have shovel-ready projects because that required us to have drawings ready on the shelf, literally take off, and to go out to tender to build these projects. I would argue to this day, we did not learn from that experience. We still do not. Spend the money in advance of the capital project, which may be years down the road, just to get the drawings ready so that we're ready to go in the event we have another situation like this, which could possibly happen, knowing how precarious things are south of the border and everything else, right? And so I say this now in light of the Arlington Bridge. Here's an opportunity to get this project moving. We don't have the money yet today to build out the Arlington Bridge, but at least could we not get the drawings ready to get that project so that it is shovel ready? Not to mention other projects in the city that are of just as worthy, but this one is a very much of high value, and I recognize why, because I'm from a community too that at times feels disconnected from the rest of the city. And this is not just a disconnect in the minds and hearts of the people of the North End, but it's also a physical one, which is very symbolic and very real to them. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd just like to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay, well, interesting that you are speaking of shovel-ready projects, because I was just speaking to media about that in relation to Chief Peguis, saying, sure, we don't have the funding, but we want it to be ready, like in 2008 when we had the shovel-ready big drama across the country, right? So Kenaston is shovel-ready. We have, drawings for that. Chief Peguis is almost shovel-ready, drawings for that. And Arlington, we're working on that. We've got funding to take down Arlington, but we have set funding aside, and that's what they're working on, to do drawings for that. So I don't know. I don't think you were on the committee at that time, but we did pass that. So it's happening.
This is a follow-up. The chair mentioned, Madam Speaker, Kenaston is shovel-ready. It is my understanding the city of Winnipeg, if it was shovel-ready, that means we would have had the properties in place. That's the assumption of shovel-ready. But my understanding now is the city is now has approached a property owner in terms of purchasing a bridge. And if it's shovel-ready, then why are we still doing land assembly?
Drawings are, I believe, at a class 2. It's about as close as we can get, but we don't have the funding to do it. So these drawings that are in place are really as close as we can get. We're right now doing property acquisition, not all of it, but some of it, but we're starting to do property acquisition. But again, it's funding dependent.
You would agree then that the definition of shovel-ready should include the acquisition of the property, because you can't put a shovel in the ground if it ain't your property.
And I mean, there's definitions. What's the federal government's definition of shovel-ready? What's the city's definition of shovel-ready? Shovel-ready sounds like it's ready, but I remember in some of those cases, because I was writing grants at that time, I scored $800,000 for play structures, if you can believe it. And they weren't shovel-ready. But, you know, there was some, at that time, the Bishop Grandin Greenway extension. It wasn't shovel-ready, but we scored funding for that. So, you know, there's nuances there to shovel-ready definition.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions. Oh, Councillor Eady, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to Councillor Wyatt for bringing the attention of the Arlington Bridge to Council today. We're in a circumstance right now, given the trade issues that we're trying to deal with in North America right now. And federally, it's been discussed by many provinces, Madam Speaker, that, you know, we should be buying Canadian, Madam Speaker. And when I think about buying Canadian, I think that the Arlington Bridge could be supporting the Buy Canadian. I was told, but then found out later on, I was first told that there's no Canadian steel company that can produce the kind of bridge steel that's required for the Arlington Bridge. And then subsequently I found out there is in Quebec. And when they're building for the Arlington Bridge, they're going to be building concrete piers. And when you're building concrete piers with cement, we do have a steel company right here in Manitoba that produces rebar and that kind of thing that helps to strengthen the concrete so that it can hold up sizable weight. And and I will point out that there's 17 million, I believe, going to the removal of the Arlington Bridge, and there is $11 million of continued design. But what I'm coming down, and I don't know what the status is of the design and further costing of what the new bridge would cost. There was an estimate that a new bridge itself would be approximately 165 million, which is not a lot of money if you look at Caniston and Chief Peguis, but that design continues. So, but my question is this, it's for all to hear. There is a minister in the federal government responsible for rail crossings and the railways. And I've also heard in speaking to people, there was another city where the rail crossings department or division or whatever in the federal government came up with all the money to make a crossing safe by building a bridge, or it might have been an underpass. So my question really is, have we looked at and had a discussion with the federal minister responsible for rail crossings about helping North Enders and West Enders, because it's both sides of the bridge. We all use it. We used to all use it. It could be used by more. So do you know if any of that discussion is, or reach out to the Member of Parliament? I, as a city councillor, do not do intergovernmental.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Councillor Eady. That's a really good question. I would like to think, we don't get involved in the day-to-day operations of the public service, but I would like to think that they have, because of the Arlington Bridge and the details that they're having to deal with the rail lines on in taking apart the bridge. But we do have the CAO in the room. I'm sure he's hearing this and he'll make note of it, and hopefully he'll get back to you and be able to update you on that. It is more of an operations. I haven't specifically asked them. When I deal with rail lines and public works, I deal more of the rail crossings and what's happening and, leveling them out, and that's more what I deal with the public works and rail lines. But one would think that they're talking bigger picture, especially because of the Arlington Bridge. So I'm hoping Mr. CAO can get back to you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Eady?
Follow-up question. I'm wondering, I hear that the local road program dollars can't all be spent every year and that there may be cash available, and we have added local bridges to the local road program. I'm wondering if the public service has been looking at the availability of that cash, because they can't do all the road renewals, but different companies build bridges. If that's been looked at as a potential source to build a local bridge for the west end and north end.
Yeah, so in relation to having all the projects tendered and the ones that are tendered and having them get done, it is really weather dependent. And I think last year, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think last year, I think it was like maybe 96% of the projects that got tendered were completed. I know Portage Avenue 1 is one that wasn't because it was tendered so late. But, and I also think in the Budget Finance Committee review, they've been very diligent in making sure that any excess funding in roads is properly allocated. But I couldn't answer you. I mean, I'd like to think that there's an extra 50 million sitting around that maybe we could put it to a bridge, but I really think there's not. So, you know, I encourage you to call the Director of Public Works and ask him.
That concludes question period under this committee. Councillor Wyatt?
Yeah. I just want to say for the record, thank you to the chair, as you're aware, thank you for the chair for facilitating that meeting yesterday regarding Hetty Dijkstra and the members of the committee. I appreciate it very much, Councillor. And just on that note, are you encouraged in any way, shape, or form that possibly, I know you've been calling for, I've been calling for some time, that that through design, and when we do renewals of streets or even new builds, that we move away from two things. Number one, we move away from being the king of concrete, right, into asphalt, design, curb and gutter being concrete. And that we also move towards streets that have built within them a standard which allows for slower driving, right, speeds, as is done in Europe, as is done in Scandinavia. Do you have any sense from that meeting yesterday that we're making progress on either of those files?
Look at some of the roads and the design in new developments, and I'll cite Bison Run as being one of them. Our roads are narrower, they've got a lot more of the bulb outs, and they're actually being designed not like they were many years ago. So we are definitely moving in that direction.
Thank you. Next is the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development. We have no reports, motions, or bylaws today. Councillor Duncan, you're taking question period, are you? The Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you'll take question period? Sure. Okay. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question for the Mayor who's sitting in for Councillor Belwadi. Winnipeggers opened up their mail yesterday, and received their property tax assessment, some obviously surprised by the new numbers they see. Can the Mayor provide any details on that process?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Council's question, now I understand why Councillor Brody not here. I digress. In all seriousness, I do think it's important. As we know, at Council, every 2 years under provincial legislation, we are required to do an assessment, a reassessment. I will point out a couple of things. Members of the public property owners are getting their assessment notices in the mail. This is a reassessment. It's a process of obviously of updating the assessed value of properties to reflect market conditions, which have changed over the last couple of years. A couple of things. First of all, within the envelope, I got mine the other day. Inside the envelope, you will see every property owner who opens their envelope will see there's details as explaining what the reassessment is, why is it necessary, what's the residential review program, how to and who to contact if you have questions or you want to really an appointment period to challenge the new assessment that is there. This is not the final assessment. This is the first part of the process. Also on Friday, our city assessor, Tim Austin, sent to every councillor an email. If you didn't get it or you missed it, go back to your emails from Friday. You will see it there. That talks about, again, basically outlining what this process is all about. Also, the potential impact of property on property taxes. And just to remind everybody, I'll just read Tim's words, our assessor's words. It's important to remember that an increase in the market value of a specific property does not necessarily result in a proportionate increase in the level of property taxes. And there's a lot more information given in that email as well. I find it very helpful. EAs, I think, will also find it very helpful. But I do appreciate, first of all, we've had conversations with our CAO, Mr. Joe Dunford, who's having conversations with Corporate Communications. They're developing, Corporate Communications is developing basically a comms package or some communications information that councillors can have, and then councillors' assistants and councillors, we can send that out or use that information as we see fit to help answer questions that members of the public would have. But I just would state again, if members of the public, if property owners have questions, contact 311, or you can go to winnipeg.ca/discuss my assessment. And so information is there. I know our city assessor, his staff are ready and wanting and looking forward to answering questions for members of the public.
Mayor, any further questions? Councillor Wyatt?
Yeah, thank you, through you to the Mayor, Madam Speaker. Pertaining to the Southern Chiefs Organization decision of the CEO recently, with the Mayor, and in light of the fact that the city has committed $10 million of subsidization for this project, whereby the building was given for $1, is my understanding, to the SCO, and the fact that the federal government is at the table for $92 million of public money, given the significance of those public money, plus the provincial monies of upwards of $40 million or plus of loans, would the Mayor contact the federal government to ask them to look into this project pertaining to the fact that it has gone from $130 million to over $300 million now?
This is an question period, it's finance.
Well, it is finance because it was on an agenda just the other day at Finance Committee, which is why I'm raising it, pertaining to the $350,000. I have a question related to that, but my first question is, would the Mayor write to the federal government and ask them to look into this project to see what's happening? Because if this project were being done and that were to happen on a city project from 130 to a 310 million, there'd be a lot of questions being asked, to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the first conversation, and we stay in touch regarding the project, is to the Southern Chiefs Organization. And then when and if there's any further request for funding that would come to the City of Winnipeg, we as a council would vote on that decision, and that hasn't happened to this point.
Thank you. Second question?
I would just hope the Mayor maybe doesn't want to commit to what I asked, but that maybe be taken under advisement, to put it that way. I would ask the second question is, in light of the fact that we have committed this funds, the funding is not clear on the protocol on how the funding flows. And therefore, we do have a bit of a hammer. Would it be something the Mayor to consider that we do not issue any refund for permits, that we do not issue any refund on taxes until clarification has been made on the status of this project to protect the interests of all the ratepayers, whether it be provincial, federal, or municipal?
We want this project to proceed. Right now, we have approved our portion of the funding. The council has approved that, and we want the project to be successful. And so the project continues on, and we'll be supportive of the project. If there's an increase request or additional funds that are requested by SCO to the City of Winnipeg, we can deal with the matter at that time.
Again, I just would ask a question maybe a different way, is that I understand the Chair of Finance or the Committee of Finance has delegated authority, or possibly even the CAO, the delegated authority to issue the refunds and the rebates based on what Council has approved. In light of the cost overruns and on not knowing the status of the overall project at this point, that's well underway, but it's still underway, and costs may be rising further, just to protect our interests, is it something that would be considered in terms of putting in some safety measures, such as the issuing of those repayments until we fully understand what is happening with that major project?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this point, there's nothing that's been brought to our attention that contravenes the arrangement we have with Southern Chiefs on this project. And so it's up to us at this point to continue to fulfill our obligations.
Thank you. That concludes. Councillor Mays, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Two questions at least, which in Councillor Browadi's absence, I'll ask the mayor, who may or may not be able to answer. First question is, as part of the budget, there was a large delegation of authority to city staff to determine a large percentage of the grants that are given out. Some sort of committee structure was struck, various applications were put in. I had been told the results would be announced in January. That's still technically possible, but can the mayor update us? There will be political controversy aplenty, I would predict, whenever this list is released, but can the mayor update us on when I'm getting calls from groups saying it's 2026, we need to know if we're getting our 2026 grant. So can the mayor update us on when that list of grant recipients will be released?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I don't have a date at this point, but that'd be a question, I think, for our, perhaps you follow up with the CEO.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Mays.
Rather similarly, the Community Center Renovation Grant Program, which was started by former Mayor Cates, enlarged by Mayor Bowman, I think is still at $2 million a year under the current mayor. Used to do 2 intakes, 2 announcements. We've gone to 1 announcement a year. I feel we're due to get that announcement relatively soon. Does the mayor have any knowledge as to when we might get the announcement of the Community Center Reno Grant Program winners?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll take that under advisement and get back to the councillor.
Okay, thank you. Next committee is the Governance Committee of Council. Councillor Allard, you'll move the report on my behalf?
I'll move it, yes. I'd like to make a few comments, if that's okay.
Well, then it'll be stood down, then I will.
Oh, okay. I'll just, je prends l'opportunité de proposer qu'on accepte ce rapport tel quel, sans le discuter.
Okay, Councillor Mays moves, Councillor Allard moves the report. Item 1, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, the notice of motion, Mr. Clerk. I see something on the agenda here. I think the desire is Councillor Mays to lay it over.
Always good to speak to the last item on the agenda. Yes, always good to lay over the last item on the agenda. So following consultations with the mayor's office, I will move to lay that over to our next council meeting.
All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Okay. We'll now have, yes, Councillor Reedy will move adjournment. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Stay for roll call, please.
Madam Speaker, Councillor Sharma, His Worship Mayor Gillingham, Councillors Allard, Chambers, Dobson, Duncan, Durand-Wood, Eadie, Gilroy, Lukes, Mays, Rollins, Santos, and Wyatt.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.